Mokinak semdol kake mofaseda.
And welcome to Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. I'm your host, RonUSMC, joined by my loyal partner in crime, Silver Suspiria.
Hey everyone, how are you?
And still no Artemis, so we're here by a string and a prayer. Tonight we have a couple of great guests for you. Darius Caliente of the United Nation of Conifers, like one of my favorite alliance names, man. The Pinecone Squad. How you doing, Darius?
Good. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. And we're also joined by Martin Lockheart of Hardly Competent, and you have a really interesting story, I think, that we'll get into. But how are you, Dan?
I've been doing good, thank you.
Right on, man. Right on. So what do you think, Silver? Start with Darius?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, so Darius, of course, in the streaming world, I saw you streaming that great 25-hour stream, but everyone kept talking about all of the stuff you were giving away. So I thought it was super interesting. But if you could kind of give us, the lowdown on why you did it and what it was about, and kind of some of the highlights of the stream.
Sure. This was my 5th year doing Extra Life. It's got a lot of meaning to me. I spent some time in a sick kids hospital when I was younger. I had a brain tumor removed. My little cousin is, I'm going to see her next week when she comes up for another visit at Sick Kids, the hospital I was playing for. So she's in Toronto a lot. So it's a great place that does a lot of good for a lot of people that need it. And one of the cool things about Sick Kids is that they don't just raise money to help out, in the community and in Canada, but they actually have an international program where they bring in, sick kids from around the world who can't get treatment in the country they're in, where either medicine isn't advanced enough or they don't have the techniques and tools. They'll actually bring them to Canada to treat them, which I think is really cool. And the first time I heard about Extra Life actually was when Bucknellian from Rook Capel did the stream. He used to do Suicide Supers and raise a lot of money. And I took part in it 1 year back when I was flying with Rote. And it was really cool, and decided with a buddy the next year to do it. And so, 5 years later, 6 years later, because I missed a year, still doing it. Still hating myself at the end of the 25 hours, but still loving every minute of it.
Yeah, man, 25 hours is long, dude, especially like the older you get. It's like I always see like the really young guys like doing the 25, 30 hours, and I'm just like, man, shit, I don't know about all that, man. Like,
dude,
it just seems like it drag on about hour 10. Like, I'm good, man.
I'm good to about usually 15, 20 hours even. That's when I really start to feel it. I work in computer security, and so once a month we do 24 hours straight. So I do it on a somewhat regular basis that my body's slightly adjusted to it, but I'm in my late 30s, and it's getting harder and harder every month when I do it, and adding an extra one is just killer on the body.
I can imagine.
So what I heard about, and this was, people like couldn't stay for whatever giveaway, but I heard you were giving away a Nix or some other things, or what kind of giveaways did you do?
Yeah, dude, thank you to everybody who helped provide donations, by the way. A member of my alliance gave us an Erebus skin worth a couple bill. A guy from P-Horde sent us 8 bill to buy a Marshall, and we bought the Sorrow skin to go with it. Sort Dragon sent me 10 billion ISK to help recoup some of the costs that came out of my wallet. I think we gave away about 50 billion ISK. A Nyx was one of the big ones, the Marshland skin. Every $500 or so raised, we would abyssal roll an officer mod and give it away. A full set of casino skins. Streamfleet provided the casino icky skin and the casino or the guild claw icky skin. And so we gave those both away, and some other people had provided ISK that we bought the other casino skins with, and it was a stack of skins, a stack of officer mods, a couple of big ships, really whatever we could come up with to throw people.
Oh man, you had me at skins, dude. I love that stuff, dude. That's like 80% of the reason I play.
Ron does love
I have
some
a-
skins.
I have a hard time actually. Sometimes, like last year, somebody sent over a Blood Raider Victory skin to give away Streamfleet again then, and even this year, and I look at them and I'm like, oh man, I wish I had that skin in game, and it's almost hard to raffle it off and know that I don't have an entry in that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's the only place, that's the only time, if someone gives me a skin to give away on stream, what I do really quick is just inject it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even, like, talk about it. Like, if you send me a skin, I'll just inject it really quick. And they'll say, hey, that was for a giveaway. I'm like, dude, what? It's already, I'm sorry, man. It's already my character, dude. I don't know what to do.
It was an
man. Sorry
accident,
about that.
man.
Jesus.
Well, that's awesome, dude, man. I'm so happy that it worked out really well, and I know that it got really great feedback from everyone, and everyone really enjoyed themselves. So, good job, dude. Like, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad it's only once a year, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'd said if I got 5,000, I would start streaming regularly, and so my body's glad I didn't make 5,000. My heart is sad, but my body is definitely glad that I didn't get that far. But I mean, it was an incredible experience. I mean, we had one guy from my alliance offer to do donation matching up to $500, and he said a 2-hour window on it, and at the end of the 2 hours, we'd raised $500. So he threw in 500 of his own. We had an anonymous donation of 500. We had Init, we had Deadco, we had Horde, all bringing amazing fights. I mean, everyone was just super cool, super chill, and gave us such an awesome experience.
Yeah, it's really fantastic when everyone takes it as it is and participates and chimes in. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, it was. I always love to hear about that stuff, man. It's always, the community is always so great to rally around, and I don't know. I always love that because I always, put the game, is separate. Like I have my like in-game people I hate or whatever, but out of game, I get along with everyone. So I always love hearing about that stuff.
Yeah, I was there. There were a couple of people who popped in, and they're like, "Wait, Darius, you're doing this? You're like one of the biggest assholes around. Are you sure this is you doing this?" Yeah, this is who I am outside of the game.
Yeah, and that alliance name, dude, it always cracks me up because it's all like tree related, right? Like,
Yeah,
well, you're the Pinecone Squad or something, and it's all the Conifers, right?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
we're the Pinecone
Conifers.
Squad, and our friends in No Vacancies call us Conies. But yeah, I mean, it started out just a buddy of mine was huge into pine cones, and I was flying with him, and he's like excited, and he's like, let's go do Highsec War decks. And I was like, sure, let's leave. And he's like, but I want to name the corp. It has to be Pinecone related. And so Pinecone Squad just kind of came out of that discussion. An alt corp of ours was Blue Pine Logistics. And so when we needed a new alliance name, because we were originally Tribes of Poitot and it didn't fit when we moved into a wormhole, we're like, well, Conifers, it's got to be something with these two corps. So United Federation of Conifers, UFC, just kind of stuck, and it worked.
I love it, and your logo is awesome too.
Thank you. Shout out to Vic Jefferson for that logo. He made that.
I like how you really kind of glanced over. He was really into pine cones. Like that's just something, that's
It's
just. Oh, I like chess, backgammon, and pine cones. Like that's just
How do we put this? It was probably an obsession not suitable for the show. Let's put it there.
Whoa, there we go. All right. So
And there it is.
yeah, there we go. Awesome, man. So Darius, you can bail if you want, but please, dude, feel free to hang out, man. And
Thank you.
we're going to talk about some stuff. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I'm going to bail. We have a node war ongoing, and my corp is yelling at me. But thank you for the time, and thank you for.
Oh, good luck, sir.
You got it, boss. All right. So now, the next story is actually it's really interesting because, and I think it kind of touches on, Silver's kind of experience with, NullSec, Lowsec kind of thing. So, kind of, if you could kind of set the stage with, like, what is Hardly Competent, right? So, Hardly Competent is your group, right, Martin? Is your corporation, and
Hardly Competent is our alliance, actually.
okay, so Hardly Competent is the alliance, and about how many people are in it?
I'd say we have about 400 plus characters, and then that probably balances out to about 150, 170, maybe 200 people, alts.
So kind of give us like the story of how you guys came about, where you're living now, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So whenever we really first started, I started recruiting for my corporation. It was just after the Highsec War changes. And it seemed like a really good time to actually, start recruiting. Just because in the past, I had actually tried to grow a corporation in the past years ago, and wars always got us. New members would join. We'd take in newbies a lot of times. They get pretty crushed by not being able to do anything without being attacked. So the war changes were really a good opportunity to start growing. And initially, we were just going to be Highsec based. I was just like, hey, let's start just a community of friendly people. Have fun, play the game, mine, do PVE, which is kind of ironic considering where we've ended up at this point. So basically, we started doing that. We put up an Athenor and Highsec, started moon mining a little bit, and met another another corporation called Blacklight Operations. And they're actually still with us, but we talked to them a bit, and they were like, yeah, we came out of NullSec. We really want to go back eventually. And I talked to my guys, and I was like, hey, do we want to make NullSec a long-term goal of ours? Our guys were interested, not interested in jumping into anything prematurely, but they were interested in trying for it. So we talked with Blacklight. We agreed to form an alliance. That alliance was called Blackheart Syndicate originally. And so we, started growing. We reached out to other corporations, pulled a few more people in, told them we were looking at NullSec long term, just, working our way up, starting from Highsec and just trying to get the funds that we needed to start moving eventually. And so we kept growing. Eventually, we ended up in a Highsec War. You're not totally war-proof. Our holding corp eventually got decked, and we had people start taking down structures. So we eventually decided, okay, cool. Well, these guys that we're up against have sworn to completely obliterate us. So, let's see what our options are. And we reached out to a few friends.
Who's those guys? You said that.
Blackheart Syndicate, ironically. They were, a smaller wormhole corporation, and they got their alliance involved as well. So they had, some good C5 money behind that. They did a good job. They came in, they fought us. We had some friends come up and help us. Actually, whenever we first did the big fight, our first big fight in Highsec defending our structures, the changes to remote repping had already gone through. And so what happened is, even though we had friends who had entered the war on our behalf, we actually couldn't rep each other, even though they were technically in the war with us.
I've experienced that very same problem, and I think it's broken.
Yeah,
I was waiting for you, Silver, to.
Yep, this is why I will never go back to Highsec and participate in those wars again, because that's just broken, in my opinion.
For sure.
We got surprised by that same mechanic. It needs looking at, but anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. Like when we first went up, we had the numbers, the ship types, and everything to manage it. And then our logi just started dropping, and people were in voice were just like, "Hey, I can't rep so and so." One person actually had their safety set to red and got got concorded. I
Yeah.
mean, it was just rough. Fun stuff. But so we eventually decided, all right, cool. Well, we've got some friends, some people that we can work with in Lowsec. So they offered to let us go over there. We moved into the Sigane pockets. Nice little spot, not too far from Amar. Had an ice belt, all that kind of stuff. Some more moon mining opportunities. So we were like, all right, cool. Well, let's get our guys used to at least a little bit of danger, since they're all everyone's used to being Highsec based. So we shifted into Lowsec, into the Sigane pocket. Camped gates, mined. Eventually, we had Snuff come after us at one point looking for content. Or at
Really?
least it was
That's weird.
so it was a corporation in Snuff that was looking for content, and he had just a friend of his basically point us out and recommend that he come attack us. So they did. They came through.
Which corp and stuff? Just curious.
I can't remember their name off the top of my head, to be honest.
That's
They
probably
were
for the
they were a little
best,
bit
to be
smaller.
honest. To hell with them.
Yeah.
So they showed up and everything. They sieged our structure. We showed up. We had removal that we were friends with, and domain research and mining brought a few people as well. And so we showed up for the armor timer. There was a Thera wormhole that had spawned right next to Snuff HQ, so they brought in their T3 fleet. So we ended up having to back off, and we eventually negotiated with them just to surrender and everything. And it was around that time that we also decided to kind of reevaluate things. We had grown a good bit. We had a pretty solid core set of corporations with us, and so we decided to go ahead and change our name, and that was around August, I believe. And so now that's why we are hardly competent at this point. So we kind of took the loss, took the acknowledgement that we were all really bad at PvP for the most part, and decided to kind of turn that on its head and make it into a little bit more of a battle cry. So
Yeah, I mean, dude, loss depends on different things, right? Like, it doesn't mean that you're bad, right? Like, you could just not have enough numbers,
Oh, absolutely.
You're just gonna get blobbed, right? And you're just gonna lose, and it's not a big deal,
Or you could
Oh,
just
for
be
sure.
outclassed, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Snuff just outclassed you. We went through that.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about that, right?
Oh no, absolutely. But we were also aware we have a lot of people who are, who were at the time a lot newer to PvP. Lots of people who had just lived in Highsec for a long time, just now getting into it. So we were, we're pretty honest and about where we stand on the totem pole.
Yeah.
And but from there we were like, okay, cool. Let's keep working, keep building up. We'll just kind of use this as a fun name, not take ourselves too seriously, but still have serious goals. So eventually, we stayed in Sigane for a while. We kind of exhausted a lot of the content there. Our guys were getting a bit frustrated by being locked in due to sec status, since it's a low sec, end pocket. So we decided, all right, we're going to move off a little bit, stay in low sec for a while, and look for some, more content places where we can roam, or where we can move into NullSec as needed. So we had a good friend of ours from Deep Space Alliance invite us to go and live with them over in the Gatamon Pananan area. Over in Corazor, and they were getting into a war with White Sky, partnering with Shoot First in that. So we decided, hey, that seems like a good opportunity to get some fleet experience for our guys. Actually, kind of get involved in something that's a little bit more large scale, even if it's still low sec, and kind of get some better experience while we work toward.
Yeah, go ahead, Silver.
I was just gonna say, stories like this warm my heart, right? Like, you guys have been making the progression through the game, trying different things, got your trial by fire, survived that, kept pushing forward. I mean, this is like a really good story. One question I had about the Highsec War, just to rewind a little bit, because we kind of skipped through a lot of the good stuff. That Highsec War deck, the guys who war decked you, did they just pick you randomly, or there was some beef there? Like, what tripped that off?
Yeah, so basically what happened there is they literally didn't like our name. That was
okay.
That was the reason for it. And so, of course, when we created our alliance, we founded it based on Lockheart Trading Company, Blacklight Operations. We just meshed the two together and added Syndicate to the end of it because it sounded cool. And I had done a search for alliances beforehand, just making sure the name wasn't taken. It wasn't an alliance name that was taken, so I was like, oh, well, that's fine, that works. And then I got messages every once in a while afterward from the corporation, Blackheart Syndicate, and they were like, hey, we'd like you to change your name. And of course, I didn't really see that much of an issue with it, since we were an alliance, they were a corporation. Mechanically, it's not too hard to confuse. Yeah, so anyways, they were upset about it, and they stayed upset about it. So yeah, so they eventually just war decked us and decided they were going to pursue us to the end of the earth if they had to. Yeah, so that was that. That was actually the reason. It was literally a war over a name.
That's kind of what I was thinking, but I wanted to confirm that because, reasons for attacking people in Eve are hysterical sometimes, and that one
Absolutely
is a good one. I like that.
Yeah, I like that
absolutely.
too. Actually, I don't like your name, so we're gonna go to war.
Yeah,
Right?
that's my name.
I don't like the hat that you're wearing. Let's go to war. Like, I love that kind of stuff. Like you have to create some sort of narrative, right? Like,
Oh, absolutely.
so, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I talked to the alliance leader too, that they were a part of, and he was like, yeah, I mean, we need content, so it works.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So, this is I love this story as well because you're almost following the sort of story that I guess that CCP, but like also like that we had always envisioned, right? Like this Highsec Corp kind of makes good, and is able to use the new kind of war deck mechanics changes that all of us had rallied for years, right?
Yeah.
And able to like form something and be able to stick together, right?
Absolutely.
One of the kind of bad things is if you want to do moon mining, then you have to have that holding corp, right? And then that kind of opens you up for the war decks. But it does let you at least stick together, in your main corp, and you're not harassed, just kind of traveling around or something. So I'm kind of curious, like, what was the experience level with Eve wise, kind of like in general in your group?
Very, very widespread. As far as my corporation goes, early on, it was me, which I started out in '06. Not this character, different character. And then we had a good bit of people who were also older, like probably from around that time period, a little bit later, maybe 2011. And then we had a pretty good chunk of people who were newer, started E within the last 2 years, I'd say. And I'd say our alliance is pretty, spread out like that as well. You still have a lot of people who are, they're experienced enough to the point where, and they're not interested in building something, so they're in NullSec. We have more of the experienced people here who want to build something, who want to be a part of something a little bit fresh. They are kind of sticking around, and they're a big part of our core player group. But they still want to go back to Null eventually, which is part of the drive for that as well.
So it's interesting because you've been playing for a long time, and have you just been able to avoid the kind of nullsec meta? You know what I mean? Like, have you just been able to kind of insulate yourself and you play your game, you have, with your friends, and all the nullsec nonsense you just stay out of? You don't care?
It varied a bit, actually. As far as my experience goes, I kind of journeyed through different parts of Eve. I did stuff in Low and in Null and in Highsec over the years. So I did a little bit of everything, even wormholes at the time, and 4-man wormhole corpse back when that was. I mean, it still is a thing. But yeah, as far as like the Highsec stuff goes and the Lowsec, there's definitely no real insulation from it. Because at the end of the day, especially in Lowsec, what I've noticed is you have a lot of corporations, alliances, even individuals who take their NullSec money and then they pour it into a NullSec into a Lowsec account, and so then they're able to drop dreads on people who don't have dreads, or super capitals on people who don't have supers, and so there's no real insulation from it in a lot of ways. Yeah, we don't have to deal with bubbles, but it's you still have a lot of the issues that come with it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So you were kind of pushed, like, sort of like into Lowsec, right? And is that kind of like where you're living now? You're in Lowsec, yes. And you have aspirations to NullSec. So, like, give me an idea of like what you mean by we want to live in NullSec. Like, what does that mean to you?
We're definitely interested in the Solve gameplay. Not necessarily, the way that Solve works right now. We're just interested in, the way that we're interested in taking Solve for ourselves eventually, working with a coalition to make that happen. We still see that as, a little ways out. We're not quite ready yet. We do have the downside of not making NullSec ISK, but eventually, the idea is that we're going to be going up against people who make NullSec ISK. So that's definitely going to have an effect in the future, and it affects how we're going to go about it. But yeah, we'd like to eventually go take Soft Null, and that's just because that's part of the game a lot of our guys want to try. We have a lot of industry people who are wanting to try to take on the bigger cap building and stuff like that. It's something they've always wanted to do. Some of them have done it in the past. They'd like to do it again. And we have PvPers who want to get involved in the the capital and super capital battles.
That's funny. I feel like I'm talking to myself from like 2 years ago. I totally get the motivation for that because, part of the beauty of Eve is that it's a sandbox and you can go around and do what you want, but sometimes you suffer under that own beauty because you kind of roam around, you kill that group, you kill this group, but then you wind up asking yourself, what is all this for? Right? What am I doing? And that sort of goal of null salve gives you a purpose, right? Like I'm going to go out there, I'm going to fight for this space, I'm going to plant my flag on it, and that gives you the motivation and your guys a narrative and a goal-based oriented plan, right? So it's a very good motivator to when you're fresh into it. Is that how this is feeling for you? This is how we're going to make our guys feel like they're fighting for a goal.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, we want to get into the empire building side of Eve. I'm not expecting us to necessarily end up like any of the, major alliances or coalitions. We might, you never know. But that's still something we want to get our hands with.
I think that's great, man.
So one thing that what you were saying, you described two very different paths. Yeah. Well, not very different, but two different paths. So the first path is I want, my group to go into NullSec, to get involved in SOV, to fight, et cetera, right? You're a strong independent alliance and you don't need no coalition, right? Like you're just making friends or enemies or whoever lives around you, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So there's that path. And then the second path is the coalition path, right? And that's where, you kind of go out and you're doing your thing or whatever, or you just start talking to coalitions now, right? And you just kind of join that. And
or you form your own and then take it that way.
Dude, I love that. Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's some fire.
No, I mean, we love that stuff. Like, do it. Like, kill us all. we need that. More superpowers, man. Do it, brother. So there's those kind of different paths, right? I think, that I would tell you to not go the second path, right? And I'm not saying forever, but I'm saying immediately I wouldn't go the second path. And the reason for that is if your guys, are not that experienced with PvP or with, CTAs or fleets or comps or doctrines or any of those kind of things, if you get thrown into or if you jump into a coalition, all of those things are immediately required, right?
Yes.
But on the same token, everything else is much easier, right?
Of course.
It's very simple in that sense, right? Because you're going to immediately have safe zones, and all you have to do is follow the rules, and you're part of a city now, and you're kind of able to do that. But I've seen groups before that haven't made that transition from like a Highsec Lowsec to a NullSec entity, move immediately into like that coalition space, and it damages the man. It's weird. It's almost like I'm thinking about like training a horse, And it's like you want, you do laps with the horse to train the horse. You don't immediately send him into the barn, right? Like
Right.
Well, yeah,
No, of
there's,
course.
there's a couple of
I mean,
things like that too, Ron, right? Because we live this, right? And if you do it the first path, like Ron is saying, you kind of burn your identity in first, right? It's easy for a small alliance like yourself or myself to get lost and consumed into a coalition, and then you have no identity anymore, and then that starts to make it hard to recruit because why join you over another corp in that coalition or another alliance in that coalition? Um, so doing what you're doing, getting out there and forging yourself and planting your flag first, and then getting the attention of a coalition and joining them as a recruit or a valued resource to said coalition is a better path. I think it's pretty much what Ron was going with that, right?
Yeah, and Hiram in chat actually is, kind of bringing up a third path. And this is like a divisive path, which is doing rental, right? Rental is so, I don't know, man. I, I, you rarely see like super success stories from renting. You rarely see that. Um, currently we have a really interesting success story. Like, AARP, right? Like these guys were like renters, but then all of a sudden they have doctrines and they're like coming to fleets and they're like showing up with like great mounts and they're defending themselves. Like it's pretty crazy. And now they're part of legacy, right? So I think, so there are these three paths. And, what I would say is, like what Silver was saying about burning in your identity and kind of getting that cohesion. And to be honest, like like take advantage of not having everything. It's like that. The best days are like when you start your business or whatever, and everything's like a struggle. Because when you go into like the coalition world, it's very it's easy life comparatively speaking. You know what I mean?
sure.
So it's a lot of different options, but so of those kind of three paths, right? Or describing another path or whatever. So, like, which way are you thinking about going?
We would definitely go with the first, and then along with that, possibly forming our own coalition as well. We already have to some degree, and that's what we're looking at. We partner very closely with Deep Space Alliance, and we're looking at doing stuff together long term. Yeah, we're definitely more interested in forging our own identity, really solidifying that, and then going forward. We definitely don't want to lose that. Yeah, joining coalition or even renting, it is a lot easier. You do have access to more of that content very, very quickly. But we're not really. We want to try something different.
I love it, man. I
Yeah,
love
that's
it. I
great.
think it's great. Um, you know, uh, I don't know if you've looked at a map recently, but I got a couple of friends. There's some open space.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We've looked at it.
It rhymes with Ralding Rass, so
Yeah, we've definitely looked around. We've looked at our options. A main reason that we haven't stepped, into NullSec now, even as a small alliance, is that again, you know, our guys, most of them, don't have old money. Or at the very least, not a. I don't want to say we don't have like where we built up years and years and years as an alliance of nullsec or even wormhole money, to then go and drop into a nullsec situation and survive right away. But that's what we're going up against if we do that.
I would suggest to you that you're going to be more formidable than you think. You don't really need trillions of ISK to assault an area of nullsec. You pick an area that seems to have a group more or less your size, or maybe a little bigger, I would not sell yourself short. You're ready sooner than you think.
I appreciate that. That's cool.
yeah. I mean, numbers, right? Like how many. So let's say, like as an example, you have like a CTA or you have an all hands on deck tomorrow. Could you get like more than 50 people?
Yeah, very possibly. Yeah.
I mean, that's
good, man.
That's
Yeah,
you
and
know,
that's
in
bigger
the
than
game
most
that you want to
fleets.
play in,
Yeah, it would
that's
depend heavily on time
as big
zone.
as you'll need to be.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I would also tell you that if you think you need capitals to take Sov, you do not. Most of the time.
Okay.
Because
Yeah,
you win
I've
Sov
done.
by focusing on those timers, and you take down their iHubs. As soon as you take down their iHub, it doesn't matter if they're the keep star in the system. The system becomes useless to them because they can't crab, they can't mine. So you don't necessarily need a capital force to take Sov.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first thing that I would tell you is, like what kind of doctrines can your guys get into, right? And start to think about that now. Munins, and then when you can get
Yep.
all of when you can get your boys into Munins, and you have a great comp, right? Let's say you do 40 Munins and 10 Logi, right?
Sure.
Like
That's strong.
It's very strong.
that's strong.
Absolutely.
That's something
and
that
I
like FedUp would fear. If you came into our space with 30 Munins, 10 Logi, and some tackle, I'd be like, oh shit.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, game on, yeah. And
Absolutely.
there's a lot of us, and when I say us, like kind of like big NullSec entities that really want to, number one, not farm you, right? We don't want that because we've been farmed and we don't like that. So, but we also like take an interest in like you growing into your own thing. You know what I mean? And so one thing that we kind of enjoy is if you're near us, right, and people do come to farm you, then we can get involved, right? So it's like and it's not bait, and I know that everyone always says it's not bait, but like and it's not even and it's not like blue or
What he's
standings or
describing
anything,
is
but
sort
it's
of like an
just
incubator, right, Ron?
Well,
You want to
I mean,
incubate these guys because the bigger that they grow, the stronger they grow, the more content for us, right, and everyone else
yeah,
around you.
that's the thing. You've got that. I think that if anyone is actually like legitimately concerned for the long-term health of the game, you have to let groups grow to some degree. If you just crush small guys, people who are smaller than you all the time, and never give them a chance, you're just going to wear out your member base, like the member base of the game eventually.
Yeah, there's a particular alliance that may have learned that lesson. Rhymes with rough.
Sure.
oh, I forget the name, but I think it rhymes with rough drought. Yeah. So it's honestly, man, like it's been a roller coaster for us personally, and I remember, back years ago when we were, being farmed, and it was just like, oh man, someday, man, if we ever get strong enough, we're gonna prevent this.
Right.
Well, now's the time, right? Like, so just north of us, we kind of want that like little petri dish, right, of little small groups and just kind of doing their thing or whatever, and fighting or whatever, taking Sov and doing, kind of organically growing into whatever they want to be, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So now obviously not talking about wormholer money. This isn't like the Kardashians. Jesus Christ, with those guys, with the four guys being holding down a system and riding in dreads. Come on, man. Come on. That's out of control. So, but let's talk normal. Like,
Sure.
when you're talking about like NullSec money, and I always hear that a lot, but like, give me an idea of, I don't know. So, Silver, what would be like a good gauge, like total value? Like if you did like Eve assets, right, on your one of like an average member, like what would that total be? for them?
An average member, if you looked at their total worth asset window there.
Yeah, total worth. Yeah. You think that's like a good kind of judge, or is it like how much do they make ratting a week? Like what's kind of a good judge of monetary wealth or something?
I would say, like, looking at my own alliance, which is probably similar in his size, my average line member probably has a hanger or net worth of 5 to 10 bill, making, on the high end carrier level ratting ticks of like, 40 mil a tick, maybe 180 mil an hour, 100 mil an hour. We're not talking like everyone is super rich.
Oh yeah, for sure.
If you got a hanger that's 10 bill, you're doing well. That means you probably have capital or two. You got some T3 doctrines, T2 doctrines, and some tackle in your hanger, and you're good to go, bro.
Absolutely, I agree.
So then, in comparison to those numbers, like what would you say your average kind of wealth on a player is? And like, what do they do for ISK, like week to week or whatever?
Absolutely. I would say that our more experienced players are getting into abyssals and incursions. And I think you can kind of make a good judge of probably how much ISK, as long as they hold on to it and save it, a lot of that's worth. Incursions, depending on how fast you run them, can definitely, can equal or exceed some NullSec gains. And
do you mean
abyssals,
Sancha incursions, or are you doing
Sancha incursions?
Okay.
We have been getting into invasions as well, but we are getting into them a little bit slowly. They are a priority for us, though, right?
Well, I'll tell you what, the abyssal stuff is where it's at right now. I mean,
Absolutely.
With the announcement of the new Trig Dread, which is going to take a lot of that material, a lot of that stuff has gone through the roof, so.
Yep,
Dude,
absolutely.
Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started.
Ron, I saw you running abyssal sites on stream. I saw you.
Dude, don't get me started. The abyssals owe me 8 billion this week. That's just getting started. All right, 8 billion this week. All right. So Highsec lottery ticket crap. Like, oh my god. All right, but yeah. So I mean, with Roracle Miner, you're making like 100 mil an hour, right? And with abyssals, you're making 100, 150, maybe 200-ish tops for a couple of hours, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Carrier ratting about 120, 130 an hour, right?
Absolutely.
Supers 200, right?
Yeah.
And Titans like 300, right? Right around in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so then would you say like your average sort of line member value or kind of total worth would be between like 5 and 10 billion, and doing like that kind of stuff?
I think that if everyone was doing that kind of stuff, sure. But I would say we still have a lot of newer players who are still getting their skills up, who don't necessarily enjoy all of that kind of content. So they may prefer industry, or they may, prefer exploration. The risk per hour is going to vary. It's going to be, lower in some cases. So I would say it varies a lot. And then really, depending on how much time you put into PvP, that's going to drop a lot, just depending on.
Yeah, but you know what? You just hit a point, man. Exploration, right? So if you get, some structures out there, if you take some solve or something, you have an entirely new base to explore, right? And the exploration, like everybody does that, dude. Like everybody is, scanning down the sites. Like everybody's doing that.
Yeah, absolutely, it is.
It's good money, and I find it to be relaxing. Maybe late night by myself, I just shoot out there on my Astero, and I love running from bubble camps. Is my favorite thing to do. Giving the hunters a slip, because an Astero is an especially hard ship to catch. But yeah, it's good. I like it.
I explored on stream one day for like an hour and a half, and it was just trying to figure out how to divide up that 13 million that I made. So I don't know any damn thing about exploration except you go around and scan crap down. So, but everyone's doing it, man. Like everyone does it. So, the interesting thing is, if you go out there, all of that space, you can just go exploring in everybody's space and just take all their stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, one of the most interesting things we've run into in Lowsec has been the really the logistics of kind of holding. I don't want to say necessarily holding space, but holding and defending wherever we're living, and especially because the ISK making, unless you're doing abyssals, is anywhere else almost. And that makes it very, very difficult to set up guarded mining ops or to set up PvP ops, especially whenever you're losing sec status in Lowsec. Big impact on that, on how you can make money in Highsec, doing invasions, incursions, something like that. So, and then of course you never know. Your members might be on the other side of Eve, doing an incursion, over there, because that's where it ended up. Especially after the changes with evasions. And they may not be able to make it back for a CTA, or whenever something's tackled. You just never know. Definitely a big impact on how things work in Lowsec.
Yeah.
So Silver, I don't know what like your experience is with incursions, but like I would cut that crap off, dude. Like
So
incursions like are weird, man, and it breeds a
Yeah.
weird kind of player, man. That's super into the ISK efficiency, and it's just I don't know. Like they're not wormholers, they're not like that bad, but like they're at the same party. You know what I mean? They're like next to each other.
If they're purely dedicated to it, for sure. But
Yeah,
the way that we've always,
dedicated. That's a good word.
yeah. But the way that we've always, the way we've always pushed for it in our corporation is, hey, this is something that you can get into as long as you have the time to sit in queue for a while. It makes good ISK, and you can go put that toward PvP. And so that's actually how we've always pushed it. So pretty much all of the incursion runners we have are not 100% dedicated incursion runners to where that's just what they do. They're doing that to where they have ISK to put into other things.
Yeah, I would just say you're going to reach the point where you're going to get into Null, where you're going to need all your boys 100% focused on ADMs, extracting the resources out of your systems, being ready to defend, and having people off in incursions when you need that is going to strain you a little bit. So you got to strike that balance kind of early. And I would also
absolutely
give you the advice that, yeah, I know what it's like to see Juicy Moon and know you need to mine it, but people are hunting you. You'd be surprised what one Porpoise and a couple of T1 barges could do. You don't need to go expensive. Sure. You don't need the Roracle. You don't need an Orca.
Yep.
Keep it simple, keep it cheap, and you'll come out ahead.
Yep, and that's what we've done. That's what we've pushed for as well. Is especially in low security situations, bring out cheap stuff, because if it does die, you haven't lost really much at all compared to what you're making in the meantime.
Yeah, just count it as part of business. Losses will happen. If it's a Porpoise, no big deal. Buy another one out of the profits we made that night.
Yep, absolutely. Now that said, with regard to the incursions, with regard to what you're talking about with once you get to Null, you need all hands on deck. I completely agree. But in NullSec, you can do that way more easily. In NullSec, you can have everybody in one system, 1 to 3 systems away, even 5 systems away, and they can burn back or clone jump real quickly whenever it's needed. In Lowsec, you don't have nearly as many in-system ISK making faucets.
Well, that's absolutely true. And
yeah,
that's
it
one
totally
of the problems
changes
with
the
Lowsec.
dynamic.
There's definitely an income ceiling to Lowsec.
And it's very low compared to a lot of other stuff.
Trust me, that's where we wound up. There's a certain sustainability that it'll hold, and then you kind of have to move on from there. I get it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, it's an interesting crossroads, right? Like it's an interesting crossroads. I remember, now the snuffed out menace has left or whatever, but would you say that really the pressure, quote pressure, of like going into NullSec is all internal, of you guys just wanting to explore more, rather than you guys getting pushed out?
Depends on what you mean by pushed. Like what do you mean whenever you say that?
Well, like, are you being forced out? Right? Like, are you being
shoving
evicted?
you out of where you're living now?
Okay, yeah. No. We're not dealing with that really at all.
I think that's such a great. I think that's just like that's just an indicator of the health of the game. Like in my eyes, like that's an indicator of health, right? So that Like these guys want to go into NullSec and get in the NullSec game because they want to, right? Because they want to grow, because they want to do something different, rather than they just got their asses kicked and they're like hobos, with the sticks with the like napkins on it, looking for a place to live, right? Like, I think that's a good sign for me. I mean, I think that's just a great sign.
I agree, and that's definitely where we want to push toward. It's definitely a process getting there. It's a process making sure that we are fairly optimized to get there, and that's definitely taking time. But this has been a great place so far, where we are now to get content. We've had, a few really good fights, more coming up with White Sky and friends of theirs, and so we're looking forward to it. We're enjoying.
Right on. Silver, you have anything for our boy Martin here?
No, man, soldier forth. Reach out to us if you need advice or help of any kind. This is what I wish more groups would have the same attitude you guys would, and just sally forth and try stuff. And if you fail, you fail. You go try something else. That's what he was about. Good job.
I will definitely. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and ping Legacy Diplos, man, if you want like pointed into a direction, not for like blue standings or any of that silliness, but like just like, hey, like we want to take some space. Where would you recommend? And they can at least, give you an idea of, hey, this is who's living there now and that kind of thing, and maybe give you some pointers in that way.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Cool. All right, man. All right, so news. So the big news today, right? Like, is the MRR, right? Like that's that's like the damn income tax records coming out, man. I mean, I'm proud to see our boys and girls coming back, man. No more war, and mining's up to 2.2 trillion. What's up, player? Nice to see you. Number 2 spot. Glad you kept it warm for us, right? Back in, climbing and climbing. I'm really happy to see that. And I also saw, Tenerifis was like the second in exports, but from my understanding of that, that's just like stuff leaving, right? And Tenerifis is where we had, our super fleet, right, for a while. So moving from Tenerifis to Darius, I think, probably sparked a lot of that when we got QOPX.
That's interesting. I didn't think of that, Ron, but yeah, definitely probably had an impact on that number.
Mm-hmm. And how big is our super fleet? It's like that big on that graph.
You mean when I stuck in my one super and I was like, oh, damn. Yeah.
Right. So, I noticed that. And, the other thing that I noticed was like NPC bounties, man. Like that's out of control, man. Like Outer Passage is number 2. Like there's Delve, and then there's Outer Passage. Like, dude, Wintercoat just moved there. Like I don't know, man. Like that's just out of control. So whatever. And we're number 3, I think. But then we were kind of talking sort of in the back channels earlier, and Blue Loot, right, from Wormholes is like 14 trillion. Like 14 trillion, right? I mean, these wormholers, man, you got to get them under control. For real. That's the real menace. That's the real menace. And and then if you take that, right, 14 trillion, that is equal to the top 5 regions in NullSec all combined, right? Like they're running rampant. They're running rampant like they own the place. Damn wormholers, man. So I know that they're going to talk more about the MRR on Sunday. But those are just like my initial kind of takeaways when I first saw it. And then also Did you see the news about Snigwaffa today?
I did just catch a little bit of that. And my first reaction was, what?
Right? Yeah, it's strange, man. Like,
Yeah, what's
I
going
don't
on
know.
there,
So,
Ron?
well, I mean, dude, all I've heard is they're moving to Horde as a SIG. Like, it's just, I don't know, man. It's just strange to me because, like, if anyone says old guard, like Snigwolf, right? Like that's old
Yeah,
guard.
yeah.
These guys, like, you got to be there for 3 years before you're allowed to talk on comms. That kind of group, right? Like, so it's strange to me that they would go, but I think it's also kind of interesting because rather than kind of stick with this sort of old methodology or just like getting old and dying, like they're just trying new things and they're going to go and have some fun and you know kind of be like a you know like a hammer, right, for Horde. And I think that's interesting. I think that's kind of cool if they have like Horde, the mass that is Horde kind of backing them up. That allows them a lot of freedom in going out and doing kind of interesting things and kind of assisting and disrupting. So I think it's kind of cool. I think it's interesting and neat.
It is cool, but it also is concerning me that groups like that have to like go that way. Because it's sort of eroding. Yeah, I could go on for a little while about it, but I won't. Eroding at the middle class of Eve, as I call it, right? Like, these guys are the ones that people used to strive to build kill boards to get into so that they could go into PL or wherever from there, right? And that flow has broken down a bit, and now they have to go this way. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that's more of the sign of the shifting meta of Eve away from, you know, that sort of got to cut your teeth to develop a reputation and be that guy before he gets to the next level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. It's I would say that the other side of that argument would be like, what kind of game could keep a healthy middle class after 15 years? You know what I mean?
No, I totally
What are
get
you going to
that
do? You're going
argument.
to keep a brother down forever, kind of thing. It's like, what about the new bro super pilots? Think of the children.
I feel you, and it's valid. Like I said, I don't think it's good or bad. I think it's probably a good move for them, like you said. Now they can, be that sort of special interest group that goes in, is the feared group from Horde or whatever. I think it's a good look for them. It's just very
Dude,
interesting.
that's how Test started, right? Like back in the day, man, we were the goon hammer. Like in 2010, 2011, man. That's all we did. So it's interesting. I think it's yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, and the other thing is like the old guard kind of dissolving or going on a separate path opens up, that sort of middle class, that sort of space for new groups, right? Like Martin, right? Like it's just like they go in and they fill out, areas and roles and things, and they don't have that sort of that baggage, right? Of like, this is how we used to be. Like, no, they're gonna create an entirely new path, right? And they won't have that kind of bitter vet syndrome, right?
Yeah, as long as the bitter vets don't be bitter vets and go and smash them in the face and roll them out. you know, let
That's
them
correct.
let them grow a little bit. Go teach them a lesson. Go make it hard for them once in a while. Don't get me wrong. It can't be easy street, but you can't flush them out either. That's not really healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I love to drop on bitter vets. That's just how I roll, right? you
Ron's
know,
your white knight.
I'm a simple man. I like lollipops in my mouth, and I like dropping supers on bitter vets.
Bad
That's just
guys.
me, though, right? um, the other thing is, speaking of like old guard, man, waffles, right? So like waffles is, closing down or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff going on, man. Like a lot of shifting around of old guard groups, like you said, and reorganizing and finding different ways. And I'm hoping, like you said, Ron, that this is sort of the natural life cycle of old guard groups, and that the players will go and find new pastures, and that the spots that they leave open will be filled by new hungry groups that aren't bitter vets. That would be the hope, right?
Yeah, and the thing I was, and I guess I'm always positive or whatever, but like the other thing that I like is, I mean, to be realistic, right? The chance that a new player right now will get in the upper leadership is very, very small. It's very small because that upper leadership is really a trusted kind of grandfathered role that you get into, right?
Yeah.
And Joe Highsec that joins whatever group, like, yeah, he you better be happy where you're at, because unless you submit your entire life of 16 hours a day and are able to just be Johnny on the spot for everything, it's going to be very difficult to kind of grandfather your way up that leadership. So what I mean is that there's a lot of groups that are starting out now, and a lot of the players can kind of get in on the ground floor. You know what I mean? Like, we had this great FC. Oh man, I forget his name, dude. He was such a cool guy. He was a great FC, but like his problem with Test was it wasn't. We were past the struggle years. You know what I mean? And like, he wanted to struggle a little bit more. He wanted it to be a little bit harder. And I had those years, and I'm good. Like, yeah, you can
You've paid your
keep all
dues.
the damn struggle years, man. I'm good. So and he was great. His name started with a T. He was awesome, and he joined Skill U, right? No hate, it's all good, because he did want like that sort of struggle, and he wanted that sort of starting to form thing. And when like Snuffed Out dissolved, and these other guys and Skill U dissolved, and all these guys, all these sort of old guard groups leave, it makes me think of guys like him. I keep thinking of Temenogen, but that's not it. That's Genghis Khan's name. But like, I keep thinking of guys like that want to get in on the ground floor and want to help create something and be a part of building something, and I think that is super cool, man. Like, I'm really happy that there's that sort of opportunity coming. I don't want to be on that. I'm already done and I'm good. But good luck. Enjoy, right?
Do it. Just do it. Right? Nike. We're allowed to
Right
endorse
on.
Nike on the show, but just do it. Just get out there.
Nike,
and
just do it.
don't worry about your wallet or your coffers, or if you have 50 supers. Just do it. You'll be surprised what you can do with a dedicated group of guys who could fly a doctrine and just get it done.
Yeah, dude. Like, you get 50 people to show up, dude. Like 40 Munings, like 10 Logi. That'd be killer, man. It'd be rough. It'd be rough to deal with, right? All right. So, Martin, do you have anything you want to close? Pretty much just last couple of things, which are so on the Sunday Talking in Station show, there's going to be 4 CCP devs on: CCP Spider, CCP Wonder Boy, CCP, and then CCP Cake Machine.
Yeah.
So they're going to have that. And I'm sure they're also going to be talking about the Myrrh more. Might have Nosy on there and that kind of stuff. And then the other thing is on Saturday, the 9th of November, they have the Eve Aether Wars Phase 3. So sign up for that. And also, did you see, on mobile, you can sign up for it now as well. Or you can sign up for the beta. So you can do that through the Google Play Store. Like, notifying me of when it's ready.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Um,
definitely check out Eighth Wars. That's really neat technology, even outside of Eve. You know what that company's doing with cloud computing and stuff like that is fascinating. So check it out.
Yeah, Adium project.
Yep.
Yeah.
all right. So last week we forgot, but this week we're going to do it, even though I can't think of anything right now. So this is the things you may not know, right? And so Martin, if you haven't seen this before, so what we want to do is just try to think of one thing that's kind of odd or different or whatever about Eve in general or whatever that other people might not know, right?
Might
Yeah.
be
So,
about your group or a lore or a mechanic,
yeah.
anything like that.
So Silver, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. I thought you might get back to this, and I won't claim credit for this. I saw this on one of my favorite streamers, Matt Hirschman. I don't know if anybody of you guys know that. You should definitely check him out. He's a great solo PvP player from way back in the day. He took some years off and is back. But he discovered that if you do a D-scan, I believe it was Matt Hirschman that did this, or it might have been Bjorn. I can't remember. But on your D-scan, when you open up the D-scan window and you got your green orb, right? And it shows you ships that are there. It flashes the hologram of those ships next to the D-scan, which I thought was pretty neat. So if you're on scan as a nightmare, you'll see a holographic vision of a nightmare next to your D-scan window. I thought that was fairly neat. I don't know when they put that in the game, but it must have been recently because I never seen it before.
Martin, do you have something that we might not know?
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty public knowledge at this point because it was talked about at Eve North, but not everyone pays attention to those. So, at one point, there was a massive NPC battle that no one else was involved. MR mining ships spawned and Blood Raider mining ships spawned in the same asteroid belt. Because their standings were negative, they started engaging each other, kept calling for reinforcements, and that kept going, and then a random drifter battleship landed on grid and killed.
That's pretty drifter.
Yeah.
Very
I was in
drifter.
Toronto when they talked about that. That was pretty neat.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I love the new AI that they've been doing with that kind of stuff. It's definitely a step up from, I mean, it's still Eve AI, but it's still a step up from how we.
So for my something you might not know, so two things. One, Dreddit has deployed for fun to faction warfare space, and I tried faction warfare, and it's pretty ridiculous, to be honest. That's just me.
We saw you
opinion.
on stream. It was
That's
entertaining
just
to watch.
me, personal opinion. But I'm really glad because hearing everyone talk about the gate sliding, right? I'm really glad that I got to experience how silly that is, right? It's just stupid.
I saw you flying a comet.
Yeah. And then landing on the Plex, the beacon, and then just getting scrammed by the assault frigate and killed. Awesome. That's great. Riveting. Can't wait to go back. I'm excited. Yeah. Closed the client. Adios, muchachos. Right? Come on. Come on, man. It's just, and they're yelling, undock. Yeah, here. Yeah, close the client. Yeah, I'm out. It's so stupid.
So something you may not know: Ron hates faction warfare.
Well, I love
But it's so balanced, Ron.
Well, I a couple of things came out from it, man, which was one, I have empathy for people who stream it now. For Joe and all these guys and Jebby and it is rough, man. It is rough. These elite, Lowsec warriors, that are cleaning the systems of the NullSec scum or whatever, sitting on the Plex, and I don't even want to, dude, I can't even start to talk about Lucifer because then I'm just going to freak out and I'm just going to laugh. So I got to stop that. But the second thing, the second part of the thing that you might not know is you guys, Fed Up, deployed to Pravi, right? to
Sure
fight
did.
Provi, and it's kind of interesting because you guys are like kind of the same size ish, right?
Yes, at least in the U.S. time zone, we're very similar sizes. Yes, which is why we did it, right? We're just looking for a group that's similar size to us to mess with, and Provi's almost at a very good matchup for us in the U.S. time zone. What we did forget to account for is that they're much bigger in the EU time zone, and they came over and smacked us in the face the other day, which is very, very good of them to do.
That's awesome, dude.
It's been good and a lot of fun on both sides, and a lot of healthy drama with the politics because Legacy and Pravi are typically sort of friendly, and they're already embattled with a fight with Wrecking Crew, and they're getting dogpiled on a little bit, but at least in the U.S. time zone, we saw an opportunity where they had a little bit of a lull. We were an appropriate size, and we've had some good, entertaining conflicts.
That's cool, man. And you could always something to keep in the back pocket is you could always just order 66, like right in the middle of some big fight. Because Tickle just left Legacy, right? So Tickle's over there fighting them, and just like right in the middle of some big, huge fight, order 66 and just be on Provi's side and then just massacre Tickle. I think that'd be hilarious.
May or may not happen. I don't know.
I think it's fun, man, and I think it's great too. Like size appropriate, fights and getting back into some of your roots and stuff. I think that's awesome, man.
Yeah, we're a PvP group that craves goal-based objectives. So go get those guys is what we like.
Right on. All right, so about to wrap it up. So Martin, do you have any shout-outs, buddy?
No, not off the top of my head.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, sorry, I just
no, you're fine.
Caught him off guard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Silver, you got any shout-outs, buddy?
Just to all those guys out there taking a look into the next step. There's gaps opening. Lowsec should become less oppressive. There are definitely places to go for a NullSec. Take that extra step, guys. If you're thinking about it, just do it. You don't need 10 trillionists. You don't need 40 supers. You just need a bunch of guys that are willing to go.
I completely agree. And reaching out to, big diplos and just saying, yo, we're here. We're just going to do this. Can you give us any pointers about who to stay away from or whatever? That doesn't mean you're a pet. It doesn't mean you're going to get standings. It
Ignore
just
that stuff. Exactly.
Yeah. That's just Reddit. That's the same dudes that are camping the Plex in a super, right? Or at an assault frigate or whatever, and killing little T1 frigates and then beating their chest. That's those guys. They're lame.
Yeah, and if I can add to that,
Go ahead.
Lowsec really is. I know I talked about the struggles of it. It is very difficult to manage, but Lowsec's a great place to be right now. There is a lot of open area. There's a lot of stuff to do. You do have some bigger groups that'll, come and drop on small groups sometimes, but that doesn't mean you have to anchor, big structures or anything in low. You can just go and do whatever, live out an NPC station. It's definitely a lot of fun. We've been enjoying it, and of course, we're always looking for more people, more corporations to come join us and try that out.
Yeah, how did they get in touch with you? Do you have a recruitment link or something you put in chat or something?
Honestly, the best way would just be to contact Martin Lockheart in game or Ragnar Ricci. I'll post both of those in this.
Perfect. Yeah, if you could just put their spelling in there. Awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, that's all I had. So, Silver Engineer Extraordinaire, you ready to cut it out?
I am, sir.
All right, guys.
Have a good one.
Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.
Take care, everyone.